Alright guys, so this latest chapter of My Hero Academia continue to further the madness of the story right now, and additionally serve to provide us with plenty more to look forward to in the near future. With the previous chapter, we had the plea of Chisaki to Lady Nagant to bring him to the boss so that he could properly apologize. Meanwhile, in the present, Lady Nagant was firing off her rifle arm in the direction of Chisaki as to capitalize on a distracted Deku. However, by way of Black Whip and the Fajin quirk, Deku was able to move faster than a speeding bullet and save Chisaki. An incredibly miraculous feat that required abstinence from many of his other quirks. But transitioning from this rescue, he would go back onto the offense and face Lady Nagant with a 100% Manchester smash. This long-range blow being enough to disarm Lady Nagant in more ways than one. And with that being said, the ever-heroic Deku would not leave it at just that, as he would then extend an arm to Lady Nagant and attempt to coerce her back to the side of heroics. And now properly recognizing Deku to really and truly be a hero, Lady Nagant's heart was moved. However, this would simultaneously cause the intentions of All For One to move as well, as Lady Nagant's failure would be punished as she would spontaneously explode. And just as she began to swiftly plummet downwards, Hawks would be the one to catch her and transition us into our next chapter. But before we go any further, this video was sponsored by Atlas VPN. When it comes to the internet, your privacy is important, and so by encrypting all of your internet traffic, Atlas VPN helps protect you from online snooping, hackers, ISPs, censorship, and even government powers. Atlas VPN is dedicated to preserving your online freedom, allowing you to access apps and websites without being restricted by your location. In fact, when using a service like Netflix, you can set your region to whatever you want really fast. And of course, Netflix Japan has plenty of anime we don't normally have available to us in the States, so that is a major plus. With servers all around the globe, protection on an unlimited amount of devices, and the incredibly hard to beat price of only $1.39 a month, Atlas VPN has you covered in all things internet security. And for this incredible deal, make sure to use the link in the description, atlasv.pn/plotarmor. Again, that is atlasv.pn/plotarmor. Thanks again to Atlas VPN for supporting the channel, but with all that being said, let's move on with the video. So with this latest chapter, as previously stated, we pick up right where the last one left off, as the top 3 heroes have now arrived: Best Jeanist, Endeavor, and Hawks. And this was of course all thanks to a call from All Might. With that being said, the reason they took so long is because 1, Hawks is not at full capacity. He is not able to be as fast as we know him to be because he does not have all of his feathers just yet. And of course, with it currently raining, Endeavor is not at his full capacity. He is not at the apex of his power because the elements are perpetually extinguishing his flames. And getting back to that first point, Hawks does not have all of his feathers. He is not ready to fly, especially not fly and save someone, and so he needed help really badly. He's more of a hummingbird right now as opposed to a proper hawk. He would call to Endeavor, but instead, Deku would be the one to save him by way of Black Whip. And after such an arduous bout, holding these two up was very strenuous for Deku. He was having a tough time doing so, but would still convey the information, the pressing information, to the top 3 heroes. And in that same breath, he was able to convey the current situation and his own deductions in regards to the fact that All For One had provided Lady Nagant a quirk, and he probably left a failsafe, a sort of trap, built in. And listen, in no way does this invalidate our stance, our previous stance, in regards to the fact that All For One is embedded in each and every one of the quirks that he bestows onto others. Keep in mind that this is an impromptu summation on the part of Deku. As a character in this story, he is by no means as informed as we are as viewers. We are in many cases able to observe the proceedings of any and all sides of this equation. And so we are by no means as limited as he stands to be in our deductive reasoning. But yeah, with Deku doing all this, Hawks was straight up dumbfounded. Lest we forget, Hawks forewarned Deku about Lady Nagant. He expected Lady Nagant to be such a pressing threat, such a lethal adversary, that Deku's only course of action, only acceptable course of action, was to run away. However, in this case, it is clear that Deku did not run away and instead ran headfirst into the danger and was able to take her down. Not only that, but he was able to compel her in such a way that she would consider being a hero again, turning away from villainy. And even after being so visibly broken, he did not leave the saving of these two to Endeavor, who could definitely have done it himself. He latched onto them by way of Black Whip despite the pain that it further induced onto himself. And so in the face of all this information, of course Hawks is dumbfounded, who wouldn't be? But right now, holding onto a charred and broken Lady Nagant, this was not the time nor place for such admiration. He would begin to yell out to Lady Nagant that he is Hawks, her successor. And with her eyes remaining closed, he would plead with her to stay alive, to keep hope alive by informing them, giving them anything she possibly can, any information at all in regards to All For One. And as her eyes finally began to open, she would look up at Hawks and question the fact that he was her successor. By successor, he of course meant as an agent of the Public Safety Commission, but even still, looking at him, she could clearly see the heroism in his eyes. And she furthermore couldn't help but question how such a thing was possible, how in the face of all this calamity they were able to preserve this heroic spirit that she once possessed when she was so young. And now clutching onto this fleeting purity of hers, she would then begin to speak. That in the next 2 months, the target, Deku, is to be brought to a mansion in Hybori Forest. Now they would eventually make it to the ground, and it wasn't the best landing. Deku seemed to prioritize the safety of these two, making sure that they land as best as possible, as he himself sort of collided with the ground to an extent. But it's not as if he splattered on the floor, as he was able to offset the fall damage by way of One For All. But from here, Lady Nagant would say something that would really get the hype train going, as All For One has called upon other people beyond just her. He has amassed a following here. And here we have a number of interesting silhouettes that I do want to get into, but I would like to express that not all of these characters here following All For One have to be inmates of Tartarus. We would honestly be remiss to limit his influence in this way. He is the symbol of evil, and as far as he's concerned, this is a story of how he becomes the greatest demon lord of all. The baddest of the bad submit to him and are ever loyal. Gigantomachia was just the tip of the iceberg, and with that being said, that is a big iceberg. It is very possible that these many figures have been laying in wait for their master's return. Tartarus was once home to the baddest of the bad, but since when do the baddest of the bad get caught? Now, in regards to the actual silhouettes themselves, you have to remember that this is My Hero Academia. Many of us, silhouettes have been the bane of this community's existence for a very long time. In all likelihood, these are characters that we are not yet privy to, similarly to the case of Lady Nagant, but I digress. Now, in regards to this figure over here with what looked to be like dreads, I've seen some people coin this to be like the Doggy Man from movie 2, and I sure hope not. It's all speculation right now, but I sure hope not. Beyond this, the figure to their left vaguely reminds me of the visage we saw within Deku's One For All dream prior to the joint training battles, wherein he was able to observe the early days of All For One's dominion. This was the figure that forced the founder of One For All, Yoichi Shigaraki, down to the ground before he was detained. This was really the only member of All For One's entourage presented to us during this entire sequence, so some degree of significance stemming from that doesn't sound all too far-fetched to me. Lastly, we have what would in this case be yet another hero turned villain, as this figure sort of gives me Crimson Riot vibes. If you don't remember, Crimson Riot is the childhood hero of Kirishima, a said to be fearless hero that possessed a rather rudimentary hardening quirk. Now, the fascination I have with this prospect is that Crimson Riot was someone who heralded the power of a strong will and a powerful spirit, both of which being impactful elements of this whole One For All versus All For One battle. But again, no point in reading too far into all of this until we have more to work off of, but I'm sure we are all very curious, so there you go. But beyond this, Lady Nagant would question how her successor could possibly be able to make such a face. How could they possibly manage to still look like a true hero? And Hawks' response to this would be that there was someone who supported him, which I find to be an interesting convention, seeing as Hawks didn't have anyone. He didn't have his mother, he didn't have his father. All he really had was the concept of Endeavor in the form of his Endeavor doll. And furthermore, this pretty boy, like he's spitting game, would then say that he's an optimist and that's why he was able to persevere. But I don't know, man, I kind of feel like the Public Safety Commission more so learned its lesson to an extent. As opposed to recruiting someone like Lady Nagant, who at the time seemed to be a relatively normal teenage girl, they picked up Hawks, who was 1, very young, and 2, in poverty and had nobody. It's certainly not the fact that they removed the killing aspect of his work, because we saw what happened to Twice. It's the fact that being able to influence someone so impressionable made it so that they wouldn't have to convince him to kill someone, because he himself is already thinking that that is the best course of action. However, Endeavor was about the business, not the sentimentality, as he would manage to pick up Chisaki and confirm with Deku that he was the only other threat in the vicinity. And at this point, Chisaki was just flailing around, pissed that things didn't work out in his favor, that she would not be able to bring him to the boss, seeing as they have now been apprehended. And he would furthermore express the necessity of an apology on his part to the boss. And with this, Deku would begin to speak with him, but Chisaki did not want to hear it. He wanted no part of this in regards to Deku. But Deku would question if Chisaki at all remembers what he did to Eri. And with this, Chisaki would be reminded of Eri and think about the fact that her quirk would actually be able to resolve these issues. Now, from Deku's perspective, it was unfortunate that Chisaki, although wanting to apologize to someone, did not feel the same compulsion in regards to Eri. But even still, that promise that he made with Lady Nagant, Deku decided to take it upon himself to keep it. Which is an interesting concept that we have spoken at length about in previous videos. Now, All Might would finally make it to the scene, and it seems like Hercules is still okay. He went right back in his car and came on over, but it doesn't seem like anyone paid him any mind. I feel like this inclusion here was more so to doubly express to us that All Might is still alive. He is still alive and well. From here, however, Endeavor would take Lady Nagant and Chisaki to a hospital and tell the others to inform the police. Now, Hawks would urge Deku to do the same, go to the hospital, but it doesn't seem like he was listening at all, as a rage was welling up inside of him, as all he could think about was All for One. But fast forwarding beyond this a bit, we would have the departure of Hawks, considering his lacking fighting abilities at the moment, as he likes of Best Jeanist, Mount Lady, Kamui Woods, Edgeshot, Endeavor, and Deku would converge on the manor previously mentioned by Lady Nagant. And what's fascinating is that this manor seems to be the very same one that was present during the beginning of My Villain Academia, in which the then impoverished League of Villains relentlessly slaughtered the prior occupants known as the Creature Rejection Clan, a cult made up of those who refuse the very existence of those with heteromorphic quirks and/or quirk features. And in pursuing this location, Endeavor would warn Deku to hold on a minute and not be so reckless. And when Endeavor, of all people, has to tell you not to be reckless and to take your time, you know that you are off the deep end. Deku is over here wilding out. But as far as he was concerned, time was of the essence, as Shigaraki and All for One were both unable to take One for All just yet. And with that, he would be the first to enter to an empty room. But just then, suddenly the voice of All for One would be heard, as he would question if Deku enjoyed his experience with Lady Nagant. That if he's here right now and this video has begun, that means that Deku managed to make a breakthrough, as All for One would convey this pre-recorded message by way of a projector, with him visibly applauding Deku. He would express that he just loves predicting the proceedings of others, that someone like him couldn't possibly leave and abandon someone like her. However, stating that he didn't force Lady Nagant to do anything, she did all of this of her own accord. And as Deku clenched his fist in anger and frustration, he would continue that the people that fall are then considered villains. That, oh yes, this superpowered society that takes such pride in quirks and individualism, at the end of the day, is an incredibly controlled society. One wherein if you do not fit, you are therefore expelled. That regardless of the wording used to describe a government body, such as democracy or dictatorship, at the end of the day, it is all the same, as human nature will always prevail. That this path that Deku treads is a difficult one with no end in sight. One that will further break him the more he resists. That in prison, his interest in All Might dissipated, but in its place, there was Deku. Why? Well, to quote All Might, it's because he's next. As boom, the entirety of the manor would suddenly explode, and that was the chapter. Oh my goodness. All for One, this man is just top tier. He is in a level all his own. And honestly, at this point, I'm beginning to think that this man enjoys explosions more than Bakugo. And listen, this is a perfect example. If you are a writer, make your villain, make your main antagonist a troll. That is what All for One is. He is a terrible, terrible troll. Look at that big smile. That is a troll face that this man has. And remember, guys, that this is just the beginning. He is only just getting started in his playtime with this new character. In his first address to Deku by way of his spirit within Shigaraki, he immediately insulted Bakugo, a classic way to induce rage in Deku that I'm sure he was able to glean from the publicly broadcasted sports festival wherein Deku faced Shinso. And within the world of One for All, he targeted Deku's self-worth, which he has struggled with all his life. And now he's given Deku a taste of futility and clearly shifted the character tremendously, which we spoke of at length with the previous video. All for One knows just how to push Deku's buttons, and it is glorious. This man is easily one of the best villains in modern shonen, and the fact that we are getting more and more from him with the story lately makes me very, very happy. But with all that being said, leave us your thoughts on everything down in the comments below. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on, because My Hero Academia is getting crazier and crazier, and we want to be here for you with all of it. And to make sure you never miss a thing when it comes to the latest and greatest anime and manga news, memes, and information, and as well as giveaways, make sure you go ahead and follow us at Plot Armor YT over on Instagram and Twitter. Because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I am Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.